Today, we are about to uncover something that very few have ever seen, something history tried to hide, the forgotten warbirds of World War II. These were not just planes, they were legends in the sky. Machines of unmatched courage and cutting-edge engineering that even today leave experts stunned. What you are about to see, the stories you are about to hear, are so rare that most history books don't even mention them. But today, we're diving deep into the secret skies of WW2. Imagine, for a moment, the roar of an engine that could outpace almost anything in the air. A plane so rare that only a handful were ever made, and even fewer survived the war. These aircraft were the hidden gems of the world's most devastating conflict. The silent heroes that turned the tide in missions that never made the headlines. Some were experimental, some were one-of-a-kind prototypes, and some were designed to be nearly invisible to the enemy. The stories behind them are shocking, terrifying, and utterly fascinating. Take, for example, the Kyushu J-7W Shindan, a Japanese interceptor plane that looked like nothing else in the world. Its design was revolutionary, pushing forward the boundaries of speed and agility, but only a handful were ever built before the war ended. Imagine being a pilot inside one of these, facing enemies that outnumbered you 10 to 1, relying on technology that the world had never seen. And yet, despite its brilliance, it was nearly forgotten, erased from most records, leaving behind only whispers in the corridors of history. Then there's the Copernicus .60, an Italian experimental aircraft that was so ambitious it bordered on madness. It was a flying giant, with multiple wings and engines, designed to carry enormous payloads across continents. It barely survived its test flights, but the audacity of its design shows how war pushed the boundaries of human imagination. These were not planes built for fame, they were built to defy the impossible. And what about the Arado AR-234 Blitz, the world's first jet-powered bomber? Germany unleashed this marvel in the final years of the war. Imagine the world seeing a plane streak across the sky silently and almost invisibly, while conventional forces scrambled to react. Jet technology was cutting edge, and these planes could hit targets that seemed untouchable. Yet, only a few remained after the war, most hidden, destroyed, or lost to time. The stories of the pilots who flew them are as breathtaking as the planes themselves. Some warbirds were so experimental that only one or two existed. Planes like the Heinkel He 162, designed in months, rushed into battle by desperate forces, were sleek, fast, and deadly in skilled hands, but also fragile and often deadly to their own pilots. Every flight was a dance with fate, every mission a gamble with death. And yet, these planes played a role in the war, shaping outcomes in ways few can even imagine. Then there were the Allied rarities, often overshadowed by mass-produced fighters like the Spitfire or Mustang. Aircraft, like the Hawker Tempest II or the Republic XP-72, pushed the limits of power and speed. They were engineered to dominate, to shock the enemy with their sheer presence. Pilots who flew them risked everything, sometimes to prove concepts that would never see mass production. But the bravery, innovation, and sheer audacity behind these machines remain an untold chapter of WW2 history. And it wasn't just about speed or firepower. Some planes were built for stealth, reconnaissance, or purely experimental purposes. The Messerschmitt Me 262, the first operational jet fighter, revolutionized aerial combat, but its potential was limited by strategic mistakes, fuel shortages, and the chaos of war. Pilots who flew these jets had to master new physics in real time, sometimes facing aircraft that could outrun almost anything on the battlefield. Now, consider the stories of the pilots themselves, men and women who risked everything in planes that were often more dangerous than the enemy. Every takeoff could be the last. Every mission was a confrontation with both technology and fate. And yet, these rare warbirds gave them hope, a chance to turn the tide, to achieve the impossible. Their stories are filled with heroism, tragedy, and a level of courage that still resonates decades later. Some planes were so rare that after the war, they were almost completely wiped from records. Governments destroyed prototypes, competitors, engineers studied them in secret, and historians often overlooked their contributions. Today, finding one of these warbirds is like discovering a treasure lost in the clouds. The few that survived are now priceless museum pieces, symbols of an era where human ingenuity and desperation collided in the most extraordinary ways, even among collectors and aviation historians. Some of these planes remain shrouded in mystery. Photographs are scarce. Flight manuals, if they exist, are hidden in archives. And yet, the influence of these aircraft shaped aerial strategy, inspired future technology, and changed the way wars would be fought from that moment forward. Every one of these forgotten warbirds carries a story that challenges what we think we know about World War II. They weren't just machines. They were dreams, risks, and experiments that tested human limits. They remind us that history is not just about the battles we remember, but the hidden inventions, the the brilliant minds, and the brave pilots who never made the headlines. As we journey deeper into this lost history, remember that each aircraft, each prototype, and each daring flight is a window into a world of innovation and sacrifice. A world where engineers and pilots pushed beyond every boundary, crafting machines that were as beautiful as they were deadly. Some were successful, some failed spectacularly, but all of them deserve to be remembered. And today, for the first time, their stories are brought to light. So, stay with me, because what comes next will shock you, inspire you, and forever change the way you see World War II aviation. The stories of these forgotten warbirds, their engineers, and the pilots who flew them are about to take you on a journey through the skies that history tried to erase. But today, nothing is forgotten. Let's start with one of the most mysterious Allied aircraft, the Republic XP-72. Imagine a plane built to be faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything else in the skies of 1944. Only a handful were ever produced, and it never saw mass combat, but its engines were monsters, roaring with a power that could rival tanks on the ground. Pilots who flew the XP-72 described it as both exhilarating and terrifying. Its speed meant one wrong move could send it spinning out of control. Today, only photographs and fragments of blueprints remain. Yet this warbird represents the cutting-edge desperation and innovation of a world at war. Across the globe. In Japan, engineers were building the Mitsubishi J-8M Shusui, a rocket-powered interceptor based on captured German technology. The concept was revolutionary, a plane that could climb almost vertically, strike enemy bombers with deadly force, and vanish before anyone could react. Only a few prototypes were completed, and test flights were deadly. Pilots risked their lives on each mission. The stories of the Shusui are as harrowing as they are fascinating, showing a nation pushing the limits of speed and human courage at the final hours of war. Then we have the Focke-Wulf TA, a German jet fighter that never saw combat but could have changed air warfare completely. Its sleek design influenced post-war jets worldwide, yet the TA-183 itself almost vanished into obscurity. Only fragments and sketches survived the bombings. The genius behind this aircraft and the pilots, who dreamed of flying it, remains one of history's most intriguing what-ifs. Imagine a plane so ahead of its time that it could have dominated the skies if given the chance. And the Bell P-63, often overshadowed by its legendary predecessor, the P-39. While the P-63 wasn't widely used in the United States, it became a secret weapon for the Soviet Union, where its durability, firepower, and speed earned it legendary status. Entire squadrons flew missions that never made Western headlines, destroying enemy armor and fortifications with precision that few other planes could achieve. Many of these aircraft were lost to history, hidden in Soviet archives, their incredible stories rarely told. Let's not forget the Lavokin Lasek, one of the fastest piston engine fighters of the war, flown by Soviet aces who became almost mythic in their prowess. Its power and agility made it a nightmare for enemy pilots, but only a few thousand were ever built. The La-7 represents the combination of desperation, innovation, and raw talent that defined air combat on the Eastern Front, stories that rarely appear in Western textbooks. And then there's the Bell XP-59, America's first jet fighter, built in secrecy and flown under strict orders. While it never saw combat, it tested the very limits of aviation at the time. Pilots had to adapt to speeds and behaviors that were entirely new. Its development laid the foundation for all future U.S. jets. Yet few outside specialized circles even know it existed. This is the story of a plane that quietly changed the future of air combat without anyone realizing it at the time. Even experimental bombers played a hidden role. Take the Henschel HS-130, designed to fly at altitudes so high that Allied fighters couldn't reach it. Only a handful were produced, and pilots described the experience as surreal, flying in thin air, almost at the edge of the atmosphere, looking down on clouds like mountains below. The HS-130 could have changed bombing strategy dramatically. But war, logistics, and politics conspired to erase its story. Some planes were so rare that even surviving examples are considered miracles. The Fieseler Fe-103 or Reichenberg, a piloted version of the V-1 flying bomb, was built for missions that were effectively suicide attacks. Only a few prototypes ever flew. The pilots who trained in these planes were volunteers, fully aware of the dangers. The concept was horrifying, yet it speaks volumes about the extremes of desperation and courage during the war. Meanwhile, in Britain, secret experimental aircraft like the Miles M20 were created to be emergency fighters, quickly built from wood and canvas, designed to counter threats in case conventional production failed. Only a prototype ever flew. The M20 may not have changed the course of battles, but its ingenuity and rapid development reflect a hidden side of wartime aviation that few remember. And what about reconnaissance planes that shaped entire campaigns? The Focke-Wulf FW-189, nicknamed the Flying Eye, was a twin-engine German reconnaissance plane with unparalleled visibility. Pilots would fly low over enemy positions, mapping movements and directing artillery with precision. Few survive today, yet the Who's role was pivotal. Without it, entire strategies might have failed, showing that rarity does not always mean insignificance. Even aircraft designed for post-war concepts existed during WW2. Some prototypes were so advanced that they would have dominated skies for decades, planes with jet engines, variable geometry wings, and experimental weapon systems. They were glimpses into the future, lost to secrecy, destruction, and the chaos of war. Today, only fragments, sketches, and photographs remain, tantalizing reminders of what might have been. Each of these rare warbirds, whether they were experimental jets, rocket interceptors, or stealthy reconnaissance machines, shares a common story. They were forgotten, overshadowed by mass-produced legends, and nearly erased from history. But their pilots, engineers, and the sheer audacity behind them remind us that war is not just a story of numbers and battles, it's a story of innovation, risk, and human courage pushed to its absolute limits. And as we look at these planes today, restored in museums or surviving in archives, we are reminded of the bravery and vision that created them. They were not just war machines. They were statements of human ingenuity, desperate ambition, and the unyielding spirit to fight against impossible odds. But the skies of World War II held even stranger shadows: warbirds, so rare, so secret, that even today, historians struggle to piece their stories together. Machines built in hidden factories, flown in test fields guarded by armed soldiers, and recorded in documents that were later burned or locked away forever. One of these mysteries was the Northrop XP-55 Ascender, an American fighter that looked like it came straight from another planet. With its reversed wings and tail-first design, it was unlike anything the world had seen. Pilots who tested it said it felt like flying the future: fast, agile, unpredictable, but also dangerously unstable. Only 3 prototypes were ever made before the project was scrapped. Imagine the shock on mechanics' faces when they first saw this strange, forward-thinking machine roll out of its hangar. Today, only one survives. A silent reminder of how far the U.S. was willing to push innovation in desperate times. Another ghost of the war is the blown Voss BV, a German reconnaissance aircraft with a bizarre asymmetric design, one side carrying the pilot and observers, the other holding the engine. It looked wrong, but flew beautifully. Allied pilots who first saw it in the sky thought they were hallucinating. It became one of the rarest aircraft ever built, with fewer than 30 produced. Most were destroyed before the end of the war, lost to time. Their photos hidden in dusty archives. But few stories are as heartbreaking as the tale of the Yokozuka MXY-7, a tiny Japanese rocket-powered aircraft designed for one-purpose kamikaze attacks. Pilots were teenagers, barely old enough to shave, climbing into cockpits knowing they would never return. These were not war machines. These were flying funerals, each one carrying a soul who believed they were sacrificing everything for their homeland. Only a handful survive today, preserved behind glass, their stories echoing with tragedy and bravery. Then there's the Messerschmitt Me-163, the fastest aircraft of World War II, a rocket-powered interceptor, capable of reaching incredible speeds, over 900 kilometers per hour, far beyond anything else of its time. But its fuel was so volatile that even a rough landing could cause the plane to explode. Many pilots died, not in combat, but simply from trying to return to the ground. The Comet was a miracle of engineering and a nightmare of practicality, a brilliant, deadly, unforgettable machine whose surviving examples are priceless relics. Imagine now, the Horton Ho 200, the world's first flying wing jet fighter and aircraft so advanced that when the Allies captured its remains, engineers were stunned. This was stealth before stealth existed, a design decades ahead of its time. If this aircraft had reached mass production, the skies over Europe might have looked very different. Today, only one partial airframe survives, sitting silently in a museum, its futuristic shape still shocking viewers. And then there was the Curtiss XF-15C. An American hybrid fighter combining piston and jet power, 2 technologies merged into one machine. It was fast, versatile, and deadly. But it came too late. Only a few prototypes were built before the war ended, and their remarkable potential was lost in the transition to a new era of pure jet power. What remained were broken dreams of aircraft that might have dominated the 1950s. Sky before jets fully took over. Even rarer was the Kawanishi N-1K, a Japanese fighter that could go toe-to-toe with American planes despite being massively outnumbered. Pilots who flew it spoke of its unmatched turning ability and deadly firepower, yet only a small number were ever made, and fewer survived. Its story is a tale of bravery against impossible odds, a masterpiece. Overshadowed by the sheer scale of the war, and high above the clouds flew the Lockheed XP-58 Chain Lightning, a monstrous twin-engine fighter built for long-range missions against bombers. It carried more firepower than some bombers, but its development faced delays and shifting priorities, and the war ended before it could make its mark. Now, it exists only in photographs and fragments. Another brilliant idea swallowed by the chaos of history. Each of these aircrafts, brilliant, experimental, rare, tells a story, not just of war, but of imagination pushed to the breaking point. They were created in a world where every day could be the difference between victory and defeat, where engineers had to defy physics, pilots had to defy fear, and nations had to defy time. These planes were forgotten not because they were weak, but because history is written by the survivors in these warbirds, the rarest of their kind, were often lost before anyone could truly understand their power. And as we go deeper into this forgotten world, the next stories will take us even further into secret missions, lost prototypes, pilot eyewitness accounts, and aircraft that disappeared completely, leaving behind only rumors and wreckage. But among all these rare warbirds, none are as haunting as the ones that simply vanished. Planes that took off on secret missions and were never seen again. Prototypes that were destroyed by their own creators to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Blueprints burned. Test fields abandoned. Engineers sworn to silence. These are the warbirds, swallowed completely by time. One such ghost was the Takakawa K942, a high-altitude Japanese interceptor built to hunt American B-29s. It was large, powerful, elegant, and capable of reaching altitudes no Japanese fighter had ever reached before. Only 2 prototypes were built, and before they could enter combat, Japan surrendered. To prevent the Americans from capturing the secrets of its design, the remaining machines were destroyed. Today, not a single complete photo exists. Only fragments and memories survived. A plane built to change the war, erased before the world ever saw what it could do. Another lost legend was the Martin Baker MB-5, a British fighter that pilots described as the finest piston-engine aircraft ever built. It was incredibly fast, deadly accurate, and handled like perfection. Test pilots begged for it to enter mass production, but the war ended. Jets took over, and the MB-5 became a forgotten masterpiece. The only prototype eventually deteriorated and vanished. A plane that could have rewritten history, gone. And then there's the Vultee XP-54 Swoosgoose, one of America's strangest warbirds, with a nose that hinged open for a downward-firing cannon and an exotic pusher-prop design. It looked like something from a science fiction film, but technical issues and shifting priorities killed the project. Both prototypes were scrapped. The XP-54 became a symbol of wartime imagination, brilliant, bold, but buried by reality. But not all rare warbirds were destroyed. Some still sleep beneath the ocean, under ice, or deep in forests. One of the most eerie recoveries was a P-38 Lightning discovered in Greenland decades after the war, perfectly preserved under layers of ice. When it was finally pulled out, mechanics were stunned. It looked like time had stopped. These frozen relics remind us that history isn't just written in books. It's waiting to be found. And sometimes, discovery comes from tragedy. Near remote islands and mountain ranges, rare aircraft have been found decades later, eggage scattered, engines torn apart, wings broken. Each crash site tells a story of desperate missions, brave pilots, and battles long forgotten. These sites become silent memorials where nature slowly takes back what war once claimed. As we come to the end of this journey, one truth becomes undeniable. These rare WW2 Warbirds were more than machines. They were visions of the future trapped in the past. They represented everything humanity was capable of under immense pressure. Creativity, bravery, genius, and sometimes, madness. Some were failures. Some were miracles. Some were too advanced for their time, and some were casualties of secrecy, destroyed before their stories could even be told. But today, by remembering them, we bring these forgotten giants back to life. We honor the pilots who risked their lives in prototypes that could kill them before the enemy ever had the chance. We honor the engineers who pushed the boundaries of science with nothing but pencils, courage, and impossible deadlines. And we honor the machines themselves, rare, beautiful, terrifying, and extraordinary. These were the warbirds that history tried to erase. But now, they fly again, not in the skies, but in our memories. The forgotten warbirds of World War II, once shadows in classified documents, are now legends reborn. And with that, our journey ends, but the echoes of their engines will never fade.